I'm Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North. The COVID-19 pandemic is putting additional stress on low-income families in northern Minnesota who may be in danger of eviction and garnishment of income when a moratorium on those actions end. Small businesses are looking for relief as the pandemic forces many of them to the brink of extinction. And thousands of Minnesotans are expected to hit the waters this weekend for the state fishing opener. These stories coming your way next on Almanac North. Hello once again and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. Julie Zenner is off this week as she and I alternate hosting the program during the pandemic. This week's show was recorded on Thursday afternoon and includes pre-recorded interviews. Well, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is particularly difficult for folks with lower incomes. Many low-income wage earners have lost their jobs, and if eligible for unemployment, often it's insufficient to meet their monthly expenses. Evictions and wage garnishment has been suspended during the pandemic by order of the governor. But advocates worry that once that suspension ends, low-income citizens will be especially vulnerable. Joining us is Dory Streit, Executive Director of Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota. And Dory, this is really a very important topic. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Now, you provide really a variety of legal aid services for low income. What is the biggest concern that perhaps the agency and yourself has arising from this pandemic?
Sure. So at this time, we're concerned that folks are not seeking legal assistance, assuming that because many entities are closed down or not functioning as fully operational, people are assuming that the courts are not operating as much, and that's not true. And so we want to make sure that the communities are still getting the legal advice and services that they need, especially because so much has changed. It's complicated to navigate how to access the courts during this time, and so Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota, along with our other legal aid partners across the state, are working to make sure that people have clear information and access to that information.
So as a result of that worry, have you had less people contacting legal aid for services?
We have seen a decline in the number of people calling legal aid, and that's statewide. And we really do attribute that to the unfortunate thought that at this time we don't need to seek help. For example, there's the moratorium on evictions, and so people are thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to get evicted right now, so I don't need to do anything. But that's not true. We need to make sure people are getting the advice and information they need now so they can make the right choices now to protect themselves for what happens when the moratorium is lifted and when they find themselves potentially facing eviction.
If the moratorium goes on for several months, eventually will they still owe back pay as well?
Yes, I mean it is. You still need to pay rent to your landlord,
obligated.
Right? Your landlord in this moratorium is not going to evict you. They can't file an eviction action in court. It's basically a freeze, and so there are so many things happening with tenants and landlords and their relationships right now. Legal aid and the staff attorneys and staff at the organization can give advice about what you should be doing right now and even help resolve any potential conflicts between landlords and tenants so that we can avoid eviction altogether.
So Dory, what then is the mission of legal aid?
The mission of legal aid is to provide compassionate and quality legal services to low-income individuals in northeastern Minnesota. So when you think about legal aid is the opposite of what you see with public defense. So public defenders are providing representation in criminal cases. Legal aid is providing representation in civil cases. So everything but criminal essentially falls in civil. Now, it's different in the sense that people have a right to counsel, a constitutional right to counsel in criminal cases.
So you do have attorneys?
We have attorneys, yep. But you don't have a right to an attorney in your civil matters. That's where legal aid comes in. We are a nonprofit, regional, cohesive law firm representing individuals in all of these types of cases: family cases, housing cases, government benefits, employment, elder law, the gamut.
So you're really a big agency. You're not only Duluth.
We're not only Duluth, no. We provide services to the 11 counties in northeastern Minnesota. So that's the entire service area of this station, and then some.
Who's qualified then to use legal aid services?
So we assess eligibility by income, and so we're looking at household income based on 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. We always encourage people to call and not assume that you're eligible or not, because there's a number of exceptions, and we have funding from a number of different sources that will allow for us to provide service to many individuals.
Yeah. Can you also then, and we're taking a look at the hotline, there is a hotline number, people can call you really any day of the week?
We're open Monday through Friday. And as you see there are days and times specifically that one can call the hotline. And so when people call, they'll need to go through an intake process. But then the hotline has been implemented by LASNM so that we can provide folks with answers quickly. In light of this COVID pandemic, this was an action that our organization took so that we can truly quickly meet the needs of folks, because many people are in crisis right now.
I was just going to ask you about that. You know, during a pandemic such as this, they want answers right now, so you can move fairly fast.
We can, and we have set up our structure to be able to help people in a very quick way. And so we really are trying to push out information about this hotline. And so any viewers, if you're listening and you know that there's anyone who might have a legal question, please encourage them to call legal aid.
So Dory, how do people then apply for legal aid service?
During that phone call, we have an intake process, and so our wonderful staff will go through a series of questions with the caller to make sure they're income eligible, to make sure there's no conflicts of interest, because we are bound by those professional rules of professional responsibility, and also to make sure that people that are calling are within our service area. So we have some preliminary screening questions, and then after that, we're able to connect folks with an attorney.
So it's not all over the phone? Do you actually some in-person contact eventually?
Yes, and so right now we've moved to work in a very remote type of setting. All of our staff are working out of their homes, but we are appearing in court with folks in the types of cases that our courts are hearing in person right now. Those are very limited, but the courts are hearing a number of cases remotely. And so it's been a very interesting process, and I have to really commend the courts on their partnership with us to communicate how they're continuing to hear cases in spite of the fact that they're limited in what they can do right now.
So then how big an impact has COVID-19 had on legal aid?
It has had a significant impact on legal aid in that it's changed the way that we operate. I'm not sure that things will ever quite be the same again because of COVID. We're looking at how can we have court in a remote way? How can we represent our clients in a remote way? How can we try and find technology to leverage to ensure that we can have face-to-face conversations with our clients so it doesn't have to just be on the phone? It has truly made an impact on our ability to deliver services, but we're really working hard to find solutions.
You mentioned early on some of the services that you provide. Maybe you can go through that with a little more complexity. Just what services are there that folks might be able to call and say, I'm having an issue here?
Yeah. So if somebody calls and they're having a legal issue, take for example, somebody has a family law issue. They're calling because they're not feeling safe in their home. We do help a number of individuals who have issues with domestic violence in their homes. So say somebody calls, and we're able to not only that day give them advice from an attorney, that is if they're eligible for services, but we are able to then represent them in their cases. So say that individual needs to file an order for protection, or that individual needs to file for a divorce or custody action, or they're trying to get benefits so that they can secure housing for them and their children, or they need to obtain government benefits to ensure they have economic security as they move forward. Those are all types of issues that we are versed in, that legal aid are experts in poverty law.
Dory, have you noticed an uptick in domestic violence during this coronavirus?
Unfortunately, we've seen that across the nation. The type of stressors that are impacting families with their inability to leave the home, the need for distance learning, the need to both juggle working from home and losing jobs and sense of security, all of these things have created an environment where we're seeing an uptick in domestic violence.
Okay. Maybe in the next 30 seconds, we're running out of time here, you can again tell us exactly who's eligible, how they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So as you saw above, please make sure you look at the phone number. But if you are living in northeastern Minnesota and you think you have a legal issue, please call us. We'll determine if you're eligible for services, but it's so important for folks to get information now so that you're making the right choices to protect yourselves and your safety, your security, and your stability during this pandemic.
And again, you're open Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday. The hotline is 9 to noon, and then again from 1 to 4.
Very valuable service. You've been around for a long time. Hope you stay around for a lot longer.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Dory Streit, Executive Director, Legal Aid of Northeastern Minnesota. Thank you, Dory.
Thanks for having me.
The pandemic is having a profound effect on many small businesses. Governor Tim Walz took a step toward helping them this week by allowing curbside delivery. But advocates say it doesn't go far enough and they want the legislature to do more. Almanac North producer Greg Grell talked with Mike Hickey of the National Federation of Independent Business about the plight of small businesses.
A lot of hurt and a lot of negative impact, Greg. You know, we have an unprecedented crisis here. And we're really worried about how long small businesses that have been forced to close can remain closed before we lose them. And so we're at 2 months now, roughly. And can they really survive another month or 2 more months? So I really think we're at a break point right now.
Now, Governor Walz this week allowed curbside delivery and pickup for small businesses. Is that helping some?
It's going to help a few. We haven't been able to measure the impact yet. There's so many factors involved with that. Does the business have a very detailed website? Or do they just list a few popular products? Can people really shop effectively on their website? All kinds of issues about website development, detail a website. It's had to help a few. We don't know yet on the impact of that. But we've got to go way beyond that, Greg. We're strongly urging the governor, an alert we sent out yesterday, to reopen businesses. And we'll have to work with guidelines for a safe shopping experience. But really, what's got our members upset, and it's very unfair and very unjustifiable, in our opinion, that we can go crowd into big box retailers, but you can't have a shopping experience at a small business that might be a lot safer. There might not be anybody in the shop, or possibly just a few individuals. And I've been in some of the big box stores, and it's been crowded. It's concerning. It's concerning to me, concerning to anyone. And so there's a real contradiction there, and our members are very upset about that.
What do you think would be useful right now to help out small businesses? What kind of action would you like to see?
Well, they just need to reopen. I mean, the federal government has spent a ton of money here. We're over $3 trillion total on the PPP loans, and that has not worked out as well as we wanted. Obviously, some people have been helped, but they just need to reopen and with safety guidelines. And the bill yesterday that the Senate is going to be their vehicle to voting to overturn Governor Walz's order at some point if it's needed. stated that you have to comply with safety recommendations developed by the Minnesota Department of Health and CDC. And there's all kinds of things we could do. There could be a limitation on how many people you can have in a shop based on square footage. Ohio is limited to 10. There's other social distancing requirements that could be imposed or strongly recommended. And I think the small business community would accept all of that with open arms if they could just reopen.
What about the loans and other options that are out there for small businesses? Have those been adequate? Have they been able to access them? What are the issues there?
We had a lot of problems with the rollout. You know, they passed another large bill on that, but people had a lot of trouble on the first go around. I think it's improved, but you know, obviously it's not reaching everyone. It's reached too many corporations. It's reached too many people who had a previous banking relationship. And the entities that were really trying to help were the very small businesses that possibly don't have a banking relationship. And you know, hopefully the second bill and the second round of funding is getting more to the target. But we hear, we're hearing accounts of major colleges, foundations receiving money. How could that possibly even be allowed under the bill? It was to try to save small business.
What's your long-term outlook for small businesses? I mean, this is obviously devastating for many of them, but do you see that a lot of businesses may end up closing in the end? It's a kind of a desperate situation.
Well, that's what we're so concerned about, Greg. If we can't reopen soon, it just really fear huge number of closures in the small business community. How long can a business, stay, totally dormant or possibly running on 10 to 20% of its previous revenue? And we've got to reopen very soon. It's affecting the state. A $2.5 billion budget deficit has been projected, and we lost a $1.5 billion surplus. It's a swing of about $4 billion. This will impact the state. The longer our economy stays closed, multiple problems are arising, but the state's feeling it themselves. How big will this deficit get if we stay in a state of shutdown?
All right. Well, Mike Hickey, the state director of the National Federation of Independent Business, thanks very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
With people holed up for weeks now during the stay-at-home order, this weekend's Minnesota fishing opener could be a big one. Record fishing license sales indicates anglers will be eager to get out of the house and try their luck on local waters. We talked with Duluth News-Tribune outdoors writer John Myers about the opener.
It's going to be interesting to see on Saturday how many people go and how many people decide to stay home and not go. It's a little bit of a mixed message from the state. They're encouraging people to get outdoors and recreate, but they're also stay close to home. So that might be tough for some people if they live in an urban area or if they live in a place that's not near a lake or a river. But I really don't know what to say. I don't know what to expect other than that this pretty much unprecedented increase in early fishing license sales. So people are obviously thinking about it. And I don't know if they're trying to get ahead of the curve and maybe avoid the long lines on Thursday and Friday, or if there are really that many more people who want to go fishing. We'll find out later in the year.
Seems like with people having been cooped up for the past 6 weeks, 7 weeks, that maybe there's just this overwhelming desire to get outside and enjoy the fishing opener.
Yeah, and hopefully people will use common sense and social distance. It's maybe tough to do in a bait shop or on a dock or at a boat landing. And I assume we'll see some people in masks while they're doing that. It'll be unprecedented, I think, for a fishing opener. We're already seeing that use of the state parks and river fishing along the North Shore, which opened up a few weeks ago when the ice went out. It's been very busy. The state parks have been full on weekends, the parking lots, and some people are not social distancing, and some of the conservation officers have had to remind people that just because you're outdoors in the great outdoors up north doesn't mean you're necessarily safe, because if you're in a line of people walking on a trail, it could be just as bad as if you were in downtown Minneapolis. So,
speaking of that, does the DNR expect to do anything different, say at the landings and as they're patrolling due to the restrictions with COVID?
Well, the DNR has already said they're not going to arrest anybody or issue any tickets if you're not in your own communities. So, but they've been trying to promote that for about the last 6 weeks as they meet people, as the conservation officers have contact with people. They're also, they have to protect themselves too. So they're not going to be getting too close to folks. But my guess is it's going to be a gentle reminder, and hope folks that go ahead and enjoy the day without having to worry too much about the COVID.
Now, you've been writing a lot of articles for the News Tribune here over the last week or two about the opener. You've talked with a lot of experts. What are they expecting as far as how good the fishing will be opening weekend?
Well, it looked really good even through today with warmer temperatures and sunshine. What the key right now is to warm that water temperature up, because the fish in cold water tend to be a little bit sluggish, especially after spawning. The arduous task of rearing their next crop of young fish. So, but what I'm guessing is that spawn happened early enough, so they'll be kind of refreshed and ready to go and hungry for the opener on Saturday. The key is going to be, I think, the weather for the day, which I'm hearing mid-20s Saturday morning. So it's going to be a cold morning to get out there and try to start fishing, but maybe 50s by the afternoon. So, Minnesotans are used to that on the opener. If it's not raining, it's usually snowing. So we're kind of used to that.
Any changes to regulations on inland waters this year that anglers should know about? It seems like back in the day when I first started fishing, the limit was the same on every lake. You didn't have to think about that, but now you have to really know what the regulations are on the waters you're fishing.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to try to wrap that up even in a newspaper story because it's almost lake to lake now and region to region. There aren't any major new regulations for our area, but folks need to grab that when they get their license, get that fishing booklet, that synopsis, and know what they are for the lakes, because with modern kind of fishery science the way it is, they're able to fine tune regulations like slot limits for specific lakes now and specific rivers. So you really need to know where you are that day, what you're fishing, and what that slot limit is, because if you're off by an inch or a half inch, the game warden might not give you that benefit of the doubt. So know before you go.
What have you heard from bait shop owners? Are they expecting business to pick up? I know they've been hit really hard. Even getting ready for the season has been difficult with the stay-at-home order.
Yeah, the one good thing is we're hearing that there isn't any minnow shortages here. It seems like the last few years there have been issues with minnow trappers and minnow wholesalers actually getting bait to the stores. And what I'm hearing this year, that's not the case. There should be plenty of minnows. And I know a few of them are doing sort of like curbside pickup for minnows, where you can call ahead, give them your credit card number, and then they'll come out and bring your minnows right to your car. They can even do that with a fishing license. If you don't want to go online or by telephone and get your license, maybe call ahead to a bait shop and give them your DNR number. It's on your old license. And they can, do all the work there and bring it right out to your car, and you can sign it and be on your way. But then I've heard from other bait shop owners where they're not really planning to do much of anything different. So I think a lot of it is whether folks deep down think this is, a serious health concern, or whether it's overblown. And it's, as you've seen on the national news, it's all over the board what people really believe.
There's a bit of an emotional tug to that opening weekend for a lot of people. It's such a tradition. What do you think it is? What is that excitement about, just getting out for the first time on opening weekend for a lot of people?
It's always a long winter. Even though this was a fairly easy winter, we didn't get really cold, we didn't get a lot of snow, but it was a tough winter to get out fishing in a lot of places because the lakes were so full of slush. A lot of people just didn't even try to go. So I think that pent-up demand, and especially with the last 6 weeks, with people not being able to get out to their other activities. I mean, we don't have any professional sports to watch or to attend. We don't have any college sports to watch or attend, no high school sports. Golf is open, but other than that, there's not a whole lot going on. And I think folks have had more time to get the boat ready. They've put new line on their fishing reels. I think they're ready to go. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the crowds are like on opening day, and even for the first couple of weeks into Memorial Day weekend. A lot of folks really get going after Memorial Day when it starts to warm up outside.
What about you? What's on your agenda for the opener? You've got some exciting trip planned?
Well, like everybody else, I had exciting trips planned, and they've kind of fallen by the wayside, Greg. I don't feel comfortable right now asking, believe it or not, the hardest part of this job is asking folks, hey, can I go fishing with you, or can I go hunting with you? And they kind of look at me up and down and, maybe not. And we had some of those set up, but I'm not comfortable joining somebody in a boat where you're in a fairly close quarters and I'm imposing on them. The last thing I want to do is, spread something that I don't even know I have. So we're going to kind of play it by ear. We'll probably be working from shore more, and which is great because there's a lot of people, a lot of families that fish from shore, and we can maybe talk to boaters at boat landings. We're going to try to keep it local. The St. Louis River is a huge popular spot, island lake, fish lake. So I know we're going to find people. It's just going to be more of a shot in the dark exactly who we talk to. So we'll get out there.
Well, I always look forward to reading your coverage of the opener, and we look forward to reading it this weekend. John Myers, Outdoor Writers with the Duluth News Tribune. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Greg. Good luck.
All right, Greg and John, thank you so very much. Well, the Minnesota DNR says you should fish close to home, which they say is no further than you can go round trip on a tank of gasoline. The month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the Minnesota Department of Human Services has set up a web page with a broad range of mental health resources. Check that out if the pandemic has you feeling anxiety or loneliness. If you have questions about COVID-19 or other things related to the pandemic, take advantage of the online resources provided by the Minnesota Department of Health and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services website. And you can follow Almanac North on our social media sites while you're staying home during the pandemic. You will find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and visit the WDSC website for program updates and more information about special COVID-19 programming here at the station. Thanks to all of our guests and the crew at Almanac North. I'm Dennis Anderson. Stay healthy, everyone. Have a great weekend. Good night, everybody, and be kind.